She was only 19, eyes glittering with 1,000 dreams, each one begging to breathe, yet those dreams smashed to the ground. The instant he invaded her world, his name alone made empires flinch. In his gaze burned brilliance and relentless fury, as devastatingly handsome and powerful as he was merciless. And fate cruel, laughing fate, delivered Emily straight into Liam Carter's grasp. Now his shadow brushed every corner of her life. A fragile blossom, traded to a man born in palaces of wealth, while she was carved from the stones of poverty, bound to him. But joy found no purchase in her heart. For the moment she crossed the threshold of that opulent Madison mansion, a silent storm detonated overhead, rattling her soul like a brittle leaf. She had arrived a bride, draped in a breathtaking designer gown, yet the figure awaiting her was not her groom. A loud noise suddenly woke her up. For a moment she felt like her whole body was shaking. Her heart was beating so fast, it felt like it might break through her chest. A shiver ran down her spine. She blinked a few times and looked around the dark room, but no one was there. Then what was that sound? She sat up quickly. That's when she realized what had happened. The big window on the wall was wide open. Cold wind was blowing in with full force and hitting her body. It felt like ice was flowing through her veins. The room had become freezing cold. Lying on the cold wooden floor had made her body stiff. She rubbed her numb hands together and stood up. Outside the window, heavy rain was falling. It looked like the sky and the earth were covered with a sheet of water. On this chilly October night, such rain only meant more cold, and she could feel that cold sinking into her skin. She hugged her arms around herself and quickly moved to close the window. Just as she reached it, a loud flash of lightning lit up the sky. Everything turned bright for a second. Her heart jumped in fear. Then thunder roared again, loud and deep. She remembered this wasn't the first time in her 19 years that storms scared her. She had always been afraid of them, but tonight the fear was deeper. There was a reason behind it. As she tried to calm her shaking body, she looked around the room. In the middle of it was the large bed, and he was asleep on it. Tears filled her eyes. That old feeling of shame returned, stronger than before. Maybe she would have cried again, right there, but the rain and the cold kept her from falling apart. She quickly closed the window and turned back. Her heart was still racing. What should she do now? She looked at the clean floor. Even thinking about sleeping on it again made her legs ache. It was too cold. She looked at the bed. He was sleeping on one side, turned away from her. She didn't want to, but she had no other option. She walked quietly and sat on the edge of the bed. For a few seconds, she just sat there, silent. Then thunder hit again, so loud that it shook her to her core. She couldn't take it anymore. She lay down and hid her face in the pillow, trying to feel calm. The rain outside grew heavier. The thunder followed, louder than before. It felt like the sky wanted to pour all its water on the world tonight. Her big hazel eyes started to close. Her hands and feet were cold. She curled her legs close to her chest, trying to feel a little warm. But she knew it wouldn't help. Sleeping in this freezing room without a heater or blanket was like asking to get sick. But no one cared. She blinked back her tears and took a deep breath. The room was getting colder. She turned her head a little and looked at the man sleeping beside her. His back was toward her. His breathing was slow and deep. She didn't know what he looked like while sleeping. She hadn't even seen him properly when he was awake. People only said that he was very handsome, that if he was proud of himself, it wasn't wrong. His personality was strong and confident. A small, bitter smile touched her lips. Pride was for people like him. But for someone like her, broken, quiet, where could she go? She sat up slowly. Sleep was impossible in this cold. She knew if she left the room, what would happen outside wasn't something she could handle. She was just a puppet here, following someone else's commands. Quietly, she reached over and pulled part of the blanket that was covering him. The moment the thick blanket touched her legs, she felt a little peace. She was tired. Her whole body ached. That little bit of warmth helped her close her eyes. She slowly lay down and wrapped half of the blanket around her. Within minutes, sleep took over. She didn't even notice when, during sleep, she pulled more of the blanket toward herself, leaving him without any cover. He woke up suddenly. He felt cold. His feet were freezing. He reached to fix his blanket, but it was gone. He turned over in confusion and saw her next to him. She was fast asleep, the blanket wrapped around her. Her long golden hair was spread across the pillow, glowing under the soft night light. He stared at her for a few seconds. Then, He reached out and gently pulled a corner of the blanket toward himself. The moment he did, she woke up with a jerk. "No, what are you doing?" she said quickly, scared. "Please, stay away from me." Her words came out broken and shaky. Her wide eyes were full of fear and surprise. He was stunned. He was only trying to take his blanket back. His face turned serious. "I wasn't doing anything," he said in a firm voice. "Just taking back my blanket. If you're that scared of me, why are you sleeping beside me? Leave the room." His tone was cold. He had just woken up, and his mood was already ruined. Her heart sank. Tears quickly gathered in her eyes. I'm sorry," she said softly. "It was too cold. I was sleeping on the floor, but it started raining. I was scared and freezing. That's why I took your blanket." Her voice shook with guilt. His sharp eyes softened a little. His anger faded, just a bit. "Why were you sleeping on the floor?" Liam asked quietly, his voice low but direct. "You used to be so afraid of me. You wouldn't even step inside my room. And now, not only did you come in, but you chose to sleep on the cold floor. Why the sudden change?" He looked straight into Emily's green eyes. Her heart pounded hard in her chest. She bit her lips as if trying to hold back the answer. The darkness of the night filled the room with a strange silence. The space between them was small now, and the bond they shared didn't allow for much space anyway. Emily's palms had gone cold. "My mom told me to come and sleep in your room, that's why I came. I was going to leave, I swear." Her voice trembled as she hurried to climb off the bed. But Liam gently placed his hand over hers. "Don't go," he said softly. "It's freezing outside. Where will you sleep at this hour?" Even in the dim light, Emily could feel his eyes on her. Her heartbeat turned wild. "There's no shortage of blankets or beds in this house," he said calmly. "But don't make the mistake of sleeping on the floor again, especially in this cold. You'll fall sick." Tears filled Emily's eyes, and before she could stop herself, she broke down. She covered her face with both hands and cried like a child. Liam stared at her in shock. Her reaction made no sense to him. He just sat there for a few seconds, watching her cry. Then slowly he leaned in closer. Emily could feel his breath against her neck and cheek. She froze. "Stop crying and tell me what's going on," he said gently but firmly. "It's been 3 days since you came into this house, but you haven't explained anything. Why are you doing all this? Why won't you tell me the truth?" He was referring to the private ceremony held 3 days ago. Emily's green eyes widened in fear. A familiar face flashed through her mind. Words she had tried to forget echoed inside her. Her blood felt like ice in her veins. Even Liam's presence, his magnetic personality, seemed to blur in the shadows of that night. He was leaning in closer, maybe losing to his emotions in that quiet moment. But before he could get too close, Emily placed both hands on his shoulders and pushed him back, hard. Liam pulled away in surprise. His light brown eyes first showed shock, then anger, but Emily had already thrown the blanket off and was stepping down from the bed. "I told you I only came on the bed because it was cold. That's it. I want nothing else from you," she said in a broken voice. "I'm leaving. I'll find some place to sleep." Her body was shivering from the cold as she turned quickly and walked toward the door. Liam remained seated on the bed, silent, watching her leave. Outside the room, Emily paused. She turned and looked at the big, quiet house. Every room was dark and silent. It was the last hour of the night. Everyone was asleep. Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to cry again. To them, she was nothing more than a toy. She knew her worth in this house. Taking a deep breath, she turned to walk away, but the sound of the door opening behind her made her flinch. She spun around. Liam had stormed out and grabbed her arm. "I don't like people who question me too much," he said, his voice low and threatening, right near her ear. "You're 19. I'm 32. Don't challenge me again. If you really want to die, walk out in the morning and throw yourself in front of a car. But for now, go back inside and sleep. And if I hear one more no from you, I swear you'll regret it." Emily stood frozen. Her blood turned to ice, but Liam wasn't done. He dragged her inside by the arm and slammed the door shut with a loud bang. She jumped in fear. He pulled her to the other side of the bed and pushed her down. "Don't say another word. Go to sleep, or I'll leave you standing outside in the rain all night. Let the thunder be your lullaby." His words were sharp and cold, a clear warning. Emily stared at him in disbelief. After saying that, Liam calmly turned to the other side of the bed. He pulled the blanket over half of his body and left the other half for her. Emily felt humiliated. She wiped away the tears from her eyes and lay down quietly, curled up tightly. She knew what happened to anyone who went against the rules of this house. She had already tasted that punishment 3 days ago, and she couldn't afford to be broken again. Emily Grace had been in the mansion for 3 days now, and in just those 3 days, what had happened to her and what she had endured still made her shiver. The cold darkness of the night wrapped around her like a shadow. But she had to bear it. She had no choice. She knew she was just a thing in that mansion, a puppet meant to be used. But even if she wanted to leave, where would she go? Her life inside the mansion was filled with thorns, but outside wasn't any softer. There were dangers waiting with open jaws. At least the mansion's walls gave her temporary protection. She was 19. She had grown up in a small rented apartment with only 2 rooms. She had always seen her parents worried about money. She carried their pain in her green eyes. By the time she turned 18, she started noticing people looking at her. Everywhere she went, eyes followed. In college, people began to whisper about her beauty, her tall frame, deep green eyes, long black hair that touched her waist, creamy skin, and thick lashes. People talked about it all. But inside, she felt broken. Watching girls her age laugh, plan their futures, make dreams, it made her heart sink. She had no friends. She just went to college every morning, and in the evening, sat beside her mother who stitched clothes all day. She helped quietly, but life didn't stay that way. It got harder. In her 19th year, tragedy hit. Her father left for work one morning and returned lifeless. Her world fell apart. Emily and her mother were terrified. Her father had been the only one supporting them. After his death, even the small income stopped. Her mother, already weak, collapsed with grief. She never got up again. Emily cried for her father at night. She cried silently into her pillow, sometimes for her mother, sometimes for herself. She had only one dream, to study, to earn a good degree. But now that dream seemed too far. Maybe it would remain unfinished. One day, her mother had a severe coughing fit. Emily panicked. There wasn't even enough money to buy medicine. That day, she wiped her tears and made a decision. She had to work. If college wasn't in her fate, then at least survival had to be. Wearing simple clothes, bag over her shoulder, she stepped outside. She applied at schools, banks, stores, but everyone said the same thing. No degree, no job. By evening, her eyes were full of tears. Her feet ached. She was ready to give up. The sun was setting. She stood in the middle of the city, surrounded by tall glass buildings. Right in front of her was the most expensive shopping district in town. The kind of place where the rich came to buy designer shoes. She blinked back her tears and looked across the street. Shiny stores, clean glass, and rows of shoes that looked like they were meant for kings and queens. Each pair placed with respect as if it had life. A bitter smile crossed her lips. She meant less than those shoes. She turned to leave, but something stopped her. A white paper stuck on a big shoe store's window. Typed words. "Help wanted salesgirl." She stared at the words. Something clicked in her mind. A job is a job, even if it meant putting shoes on someone else's feet. If that was her fate, then who was she to question it? Her bitter smile returned. She gripped the strap of her bag tightly and walked straight across the street. She entered the store. That moment, that one step, was going to change everything. And that's how she met Liam Carter. After getting the job information at the counter, Emily was taken to the manager. He looked at her from head to toe. She was young and beautiful, and that was all he needed. Her education didn't matter to him at all. "All right, miss. You can start tomorrow morning," he said, tapping his pen on the desk. "Just remember, this is a high-end shoe store. The women who come here belong to the elite class of the city. So, work on your appearance and behavior before you come again." He glanced at her plain clothes with disapproval. Emily lowered her gaze. She didn't fully understand, but she could feel his judgment. When she returned home, she quietly pulled out the best outfit she had and ironed it carefully. She was happy. A job was a job. At least the kitchen would have food now. That night, the 19-year-old girl buried all her dreams deep inside her heart. The next day, she reached the store exactly on time, dressed as neatly as she could. "What are you wearing?" the manager scowled. "I told you this kind of outfit won't work here. You look like you've wrapped a curtain around yourself." He pointed his pen toward her outfit. His eyes were full of disdain. Emily's face turned red with shame. The manager took a deep breath and picked up the intercom. He called another salesgirl to come in. When the girl walked in, Emily's heart raced. She was dressed in a short skirt that stopped at her knees and a fitted top. Her hair was tied back stylishly, and she wore full makeup. "Take Emily with you," the manager ordered. "Change her outfit, and make sure she doesn't walk around the store like this again. Customers will think we're hiring people off the street." He mumbled the last words and turned back to his desk. Emily felt a deep sting in her chest, but she said nothing and quietly followed the salesgirl out. The girl handed her a clean store uniform, a black skirt that ended above the knees, and a matching sleeveless blouse. It was probably the official dress code. Emily stared at it with trembling hands. "I've never worn something like this," she whispered nervously. The girl gave her a bored look. "If you don't wear it, the manager won't let you work here. Honestly, I'm surprised he even hired you. I doubt you even speak English properly." She threw the clothes onto the nearby bench and walked out. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Her hands shook as she picked up the uniform and walked into the restroom. She stood there for a while, breathing heavily. Then slowly she changed into the skirt and blouse. When she came out, she couldn't even look at herself. She kept trying to pull the skirt down. She avoided the mirror, ashamed and small. Then came the voice again. "Emily, come out. Customers are here. I'm not going to handle them alone," the salesgirl called. Emily brushed her golden hair over her shoulders and stepped out. As expected, the store was filling up. The women looked like they belonged in glossy magazines. Sharp heels, expensive handbags, shiny jewelry. Their makeup was perfect, their perfumes strong. They walked in like queens. They barely looked at the staff. They pointed at the shelves, expecting shoes to be brought and placed at their feet. Emily's job was simple: kneel down, remove their shoes, and help them wear new ones. She smiled through it all. Sometimes she had to listen to their complaints. Sometimes they ignored her completely. And sometimes they looked at her like she wasn't even human. But Emily kept going. She had to. She had no choice. She had to feed her mother. She had to keep the lights on at home. No matter how many times she felt insulted, no matter how many times her face turned red from shame, she smiled and continued. Her back ached from bending. Her knees hurt from kneeling. But her eyes stayed dry, even if her heart didn't. She reminded herself, this job is better than nothing, and maybe this job was her first step toward a better life. Or maybe just another way life was testing her. It had barely been a week since Emily Grace started working at the shoe store. One afternoon, she stood near the racks, tired and anxious, cracking her fingers. Her hazel eyes stayed fixed on the clock. Time was slipping, and the lady sitting in front of her still hadn't made a decision. "Ma'am, is there anything you like?" Emily asked politely, trying to keep her voice calm. The woman looked like she came from a wealthy background. She had already tried on every pair of shoes in the store but still wasn't satisfied. "Nothing is impressive here. Bring me those black heels," she said coldly, pointing at a pair in the corner with thin straps around the ankle. Emily glanced at the shoes, then at the woman's age. Without thinking, she said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't think those heels would be comfortable for you at your age." She didn't mean harm. Her voice held concern. But the woman's face turned red with anger. "What do you mean? Are you calling me old? Just because you're young and dressed up in tight clothes doesn't mean you can insult me," she shouted. Her voice echoed in the store. Emily's face flushed with fear. "I'm really sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean it that way. I'll get the shoes right away," she said, turning quickly. But the woman's shouting had already drawn attention. The two other salesgirls gave Emily angry stares. "Do you even know who she is? That's Mrs. Sawyer. People like us work in her mansion. She's one of our regulars. Now you've made her angry," one of the girls whispered harshly. Emily felt her breath tighten. She turned back to Mrs. Sawyer. "Please don't complain. I'm really sorry. If I've hurt you in any way, please forgive me," Emily said with folded hands, tears rolling down her cheeks. Mrs. Sawyer looked at her with disgust. "I know girls like you. Hungry for work, standing here selling shoes because you have no other choice. Get the heels and put them on me." Emily quickly wiped her tears, nodded, and brought the heels. "Take these off," Mrs. Sawyer commanded. Emily knelt, removed the shoes from her. The woman's command echoed with icy dominance. Emily felt as if her life had just been spared. Nodding quickly, she wiped away her tears with the back of her trembling hand, turned around, and returned with the heels. Mrs. Sawyer had a faint smile playing on her lips. "Take off my shoes," she ordered coolly. Emily bent down silently, unfastened the expensive shoes from Mrs. Sawyer's feet, and gently slid the stilettos on. As she wrapped the straps around the woman's ankles, Mrs. Sawyer looked down at her with the kind of satisfaction only power and wealth can offer. "Hold your palm out," she said, voice filled with a calculated pride. "I want to see how these heels feel on something soft. You see, just like your delicate hands, my entire estate has carpets just as plush." Her tone reeked of arrogance. Emily looked up in disbelief, her tear-filled eyes meeting Mrs. Sawyer's gaze, a gaze laced with amusement. Around her, no one moved. The sales associate stood at a distance, deliberately ignoring the scene. Behind the glass door of his office, the store manager watched silently. Emily blinked back tears, swallowed her humiliation, and shakily placed her palm under Mrs. Sawyer's heel. With chilling ease, Mrs. Sawyer lowered her stiletto onto Emily's hand, applying gentle pressure. A muted cry escaped Emily's lips. Mrs. Sawyer's smile deepened. "Oh, I'm sorry if that hurt," she said, feigning innocence. Emily shook her head quickly, fighting the pain coursing through her red, trembling hand. At least Mrs. Sawyer hadn't applied her full weight. "Take these off, I don't want them anymore," she ordered. Emily's hands quivered as she slipped off the heels and placed them back on the shelf. She had never experienced such humiliation in her life. Mrs. Sawyer gave her one last assessing look before rising with calm elegance and exiting the store without another word. Emily wanted to break down, to cry right there on the floor. But instead, with numb arms and aching hands, she turned and began rearranging the rejected shoes back on display. Her heart had shattered into 1,000 quiet pieces, and her hand pulsed with pain. That same evening, drained and broken, Emily stepped out of the store into the crisp night air. She barely had time to breathe when a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of her. Her heart thudded. The passenger door opened. She froze. Inside, seated comfortably and poised, was Mrs. Sawyer. Her eyes locked onto Emily with a smile that didn't reach her soul. "Come, sit down. I have something important to discuss with you," she said, voice raised slightly. Emily felt the ground vanish beneath her. She glanced around nervously. No one noticed. No one cared. If they kidnapped her, who would stop them? Maybe humiliation was just her destiny. Taking a shaky breath, she stepped into the vehicle. "You look good in these clothes," Mrs. Sawyer commented, eyes scanning Emily from head to toe. "Much better than that ridiculous traditional outfit you had earlier." Emily felt her face burn. "I've already looked into your background," Mrs. Sawyer began, her voice steady and sharp. "Father's gone, mother's sick, education incomplete. You can work your whole life in that shoe store, placing shoes on strangers' feet, and you'll still struggle for a decent meal. And marriage? Maybe a cab driver or someone with a food cart on the street corner." She paused dramatically. "But I have an offer for you." Emily's heart clenched. "An offer?" Her lips moved without sound. "Yes, an offer. Marry my son." Emily's eyes widened. "I want a good, respectable daughter-in-law, and I believe girls from modest homes make the best ones. My son, well, he's 32 now. My only child, no interest in women whatsoever. But I want an heir, and soon." Her words hit like bricks. "If you agree to marry him, I'll pay for your mother's treatment. Solve all your problems. You'll never have to step into that store again. You'll move into a mansion that people like you can't even dream of." She paused again this time, her tone turned colder. "But if you refuse?" Emily held her breath. "If you say no, I'll make sure you lose your job, and I'll personally ensure no one else hires you again. When I decide something, I see it through." Her words landed like daggers. She casually tapped her manicured nails against her knee. "Here," she said, handing over a small card with a number scribbled on the back. "Think about it." Emily stared at the perfectly polished hand offering her the card rings sparkling, nails flawless, that expensive car, and the woman herself. Everything screamed power, and she didn't belong to that world. But why was this woman choosing her? A sudden wave of resentment surged within Emily. "I might be poor, but I'm not anyone's servant," she said bitterly. "You can do whatever you want, cancel my job if that makes you happy. But I will not accept your offer." She yanked her bag over her shoulder, stood tall, and looked Mrs. Sawyer straight in the eye. The smile on Mrs. Sawyer's face vanished. But Emily didn't care. Not anymore. Without another word, she pulled open the door and stepped out. As she walked away, her knees nearly gave out beneath her. The ground swayed under her feet. She had tried so hard to be strong, but inside, she was shaking like a dried leaf in the wind. She didn't even know how she made it home. But by the time she stepped inside her tiny apartment, one thing was certain. She had said no to a proud woman who wasn't used to hearing that word. The city lights of dusk had barely touched the sky when Emily stepped out of the cab and walked toward her apartment. Her heels clicked softly on the concrete, but her mind was elsewhere on the long, exhausting day at work. As she reached her door, a sharp scream escaped her lips. The door was wide open. Her heart pounded violently against her chest. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped inside. The silence inside the apartment was haunting, unnaturally still, unnervingly quiet. "Emily," a voice called. She turned sharply to find her neighbor, Mrs. Gray, sitting on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling. "Thank God you're here. Your mother. She suddenly collapsed. They took her to the hospital. You should go now." Emily didn't ask another question. Without a second's thought, she turned and ran. Her legs carried her faster than her thoughts. The hospital wasn't far, but each step felt like eternity. Inside the hospital's cold, sterile corridors, a doctor approached her almost instantly. "Are you Miss Emily?" Yes, I am. My mother, where is she? What happened?" Her voice cracked mid-sentence. "I'm sorry. Your mother has been diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. Unfortunately, we don't have the facilities to treat her here. She needs to be transferred to a more advanced hospital. But the cost..." He paused. Emily staggered. A small, choked gasp left her lips. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto a bench in the hallway. Her hands trembled. Tears fell freely, silently, onto the floor. The world felt like it was caving in. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time lost meaning. Then her trembling fingers reached for her phone. There was only one person she could call. She dialed. "Mrs. Sawyer," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm ready for the marriage." There was a pause. Then a slow, satisfied laugh echoed from the other end. "Good girl, stay where you are. My driver is on his way. Tonight, you will be a bride." An hour later, a sleek black luxury car pulled up in front of the hospital. Emily stepped in quietly, her expression vacant. The car drove straight to an opulent salon. A uniformed woman escorted her inside. Emily moved like a shadow, silent, emotionless. Within minutes, the beauticians transformed her. Her hair was styled, her makeup flawless, and the white gown they put on her shimmered under the lights. She looked at herself in the mirror and gasped softly. Was that really her? A haunting beauty stared back, eyes filled with fear and sorrow, lips trembling beneath the fragile veil, but undeniably breathtaking. A call came. The attendant turned, nodded, and gently took Emily by the arm. The car drove again this time, into the heart of wealth and power. A grand mansion rose before her, its architecture regal, its decorations exquisite. Emily stepped out hesitantly, her heart hammering. Inside, she was seated in a finely decorated room. Moments later, the door opened. Mrs. Sawyer walked in, followed by 2 attendants and a tall, well-dressed man carrying documents. Emily froze. The man placed the papers in front of her. Her hands, pale and shaking, reached for the pen. As she signed, the door opened again. She didn't look up, but she felt him. The air shifted. A scent, warm, masculine, expensive, wrapped around her. Someone else had entered the room. Her veil hid her expression, but her fingers twitched. She signed. Mrs. Sawyer approached and placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. Her voice was calm and final. "From this moment on, you are the lady of this mansion. I trust you will not disappoint me." With that, they all left. Emily remained shivering quietly. She thought of her mother. Only her mother. A few minutes later, a housemaid returned. "Please, come with me." She led her through wide golden hallways into another grand room. It was perfectly furnished, every item screaming luxury and wealth. Emily looked around and quietly sat in the farthest corner. Alone, married, afraid, and waiting for the man she had just become bound to. A sharp, mocking female voice cut through the silence. Well, she finally did it. The mighty Mrs. Sawyer actually pulled this off. Emily looked up, startled. A young woman, maybe around 30, stood at the door. Her clothes were designer, her hair perfectly styled, but her eyes burned with disdain. "Excuse me?" Emily whispered. The woman marched forward and without warning grabbed Emily's chin harshly. "Don't act innocent," she sneered. "She didn't tell you, did she, that the man you married, Liam Carter, is my husband? I'm Vanessa Carter." Emily's eyes widened in horror. Her skin turned ice cold. "You must think you're so special. Maybe your looks gave you confidence," Vanessa said through gritted teeth. "But let me be clear, you were dragged out of the gutter. You're not worthy of Liam. You never will be." She shoved Emily's face away and stepped back, eyes still burning holes into her. Then she turned to the maid nearby and grabbed a glass of milk from her tray. "Here, drink this," she ordered, thrusting it toward Emily. Emily didn't move. "Don't make me repeat myself. I'm not your maid. You'll need your health, if you're going to give Mrs. Sawyer the grandchild she wants." Emily's trembling hands took the glass. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks. Vanessa didn't look away until the last drop was gone. Smirking in victory, she snatched the empty glass and turned away. Her eyes, sharp and venomous, lingered one last time on Emily before she stormed out. Alone now, Emily felt her head grow heavier. A fog settled over her thoughts. Her pulse slowed. She clutched the edge of the bed, blinking rapidly. What was happening? Was it the stress? Or something far more dangerous? She barely had time to think. Her vision blurred. Her limbs weakened. And then everything went dark. Her body slumped sideways, lifeless and still. Outside the room, Vanessa glanced at the now empty glass in her hand. Her lips curled in satisfaction. The drug had worked. Within minutes, Emily Grace, the girl who had stepped into this world hoping to save her mother, had fallen into a trap deeper than she could ever imagine. The clock kept ticking, and by the time a worn-out Liam Carter opened the door and stepped into the room, he froze at the sight before him. There she was, Emily Grace, dressed in an elegant ivory gown, fast asleep on the bed. Her golden hair fanned across the pillow, her delicate face glowing softly under the light. For a moment, Liam simply stood there, stunned. He had forgotten just hours ago. He had signed papers that made this woman his wife. His jaw clenched, emotions stirring. There was no denying it, she was breathtaking. But within seconds, he shook his head and backed out of the room quietly. He walked down the long hallway toward his mother's room. He knew she would still be awake. She always was, even late into the night. He knocked, then entered. There she was, Mrs. Sawyer, sitting by her bed, straight-backed and alert. The moment she saw her handsome son walk in, her lips curled into a knowing smile. "You're not with your bride?" she asked with a calm, satisfied tone. "I found you a beautiful girl, Liam. Innocent, sweet, and simple. She'll do anything you say." Liam rubbed his forehead in frustration. "Why did you do this, Mom? You brought her into the house dressed like a bride, made me sign the wedding documents, and I didn't even know who she was. You forced her into my life without my consent. Don't you remember, Vanessa?" Mrs. Sawyer's smile slowly faded. "Yes, I know who Vanessa is. Your wife, the one I personally chose for you. The daughter of a wealthy, powerful businessman. The one who's always too busy chasing her career to care about you or this home." She stood up now, her voice calm but firm. "She lives in her city apartment most of the month. Only visits here to toss you a cold word or two. And when she's here, all she ever talks about is her father's fortune. She refused to have children because it might ruin her body. I had enough of her pride and her terms. So I ended it in one clean move." Her voice dropped, steady and unwavering. "Now go spend time with your new wife. I'm sure she'll give us the news we've been waiting for." Liam looked at his mother with quiet disbelief. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of her room, this time leaving the house entirely. Meanwhile, Emily was fast asleep when a harsh jolt on her arm shook her awake. She gasped and sat up, startled. "Who do you think you are?" "Sleeping like a queen?" the angry voice growled. "Get up and remember your place." Emily turned her head in shock. Standing above her was a woman dressed in expensive clothes, eyes full of rage. It was Vanessa Carter. Emily's breath caught. Vanessa's grip was rough and unkind. A housemaid stood beside her, holding a plain outfit. "Change out of this little bridal dream," Vanessa snapped. "You don't deserve it." Vanessa shoved Emily toward the bathroom, and the maid followed behind. When Emily came out, changed into simple clothes, Vanessa smirked. "Take her to the kitchen," she ordered. "She'll cook every meal in this house today." Since she was so desperate to marry Liam, let her earn it. Her poisonous gaze stayed on Emily a second longer, before she clicked her heels and walked away. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. What had she gotten herself into? The man she had been forced to marry hadn't even looked at her, let alone spoken a word. And now his first wife, the real wife, had made it clear she wasn't going anywhere. Emily followed the maid in silence, her steps slow and heavy. Her mind felt hollow, her heart more so. The kitchen was warm and unfamiliar. The maid handed her a list. Long, detailed, impossible. "These are the dishes you'll prepare," she said. Emily took a deep breath. She had no strength left to argue. Maybe this was how her life would be now, a nameless servant in a mansion, where no one truly saw her. She worked quietly, her hands moving on autopilot. One dish after another, chopping, stirring, lifting heavy pans. Her legs trembled from standing too long. Her fingers burned. Even in the cold October air, sweat began to collect on her forehead. Still, she didn't stop. She couldn't. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Whether Liam would speak to her, whether Vanessa would let her stay, or whether this home, this lie, would swallow her whole. Emily Grace was stirring the sauce pot when she heard a deep male voice behind her. "Some friends are coming over for dinner tonight. Make something nice, and make sure it's perfect." Startled, she turned around quickly. Standing in the doorway was Liam Carter. Liam stared at her for a long moment, then clenched his jaw and turned to leave. But before he could go, Emily's voice trembled from behind him. "Who are you?" The words spilled out before she could stop them. She instantly regretted asking. What if she had stepped beyond her place? What if he yelled at her? But to her surprise, he stopped calmly in the doorway. Turning around with steady eyes, he replied, "I'm Liam Carter, your husband." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Emily frozen by the stove, her heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. So this was him, Liam Carter. She whispered his name under her breath, trying to believe the man who had just left was really her husband. But she knew her place. She wasn't brought here to be loved, just to obey. She turned back to the pot and checked the salt again. That night, she worked in the kitchen until her back ached. The other residents of the house had long finished their meals, but she remained, scrubbing what felt like an endless mountain of dishes. Not until the last plate was cleaned and dried did she finally pause. Her whole body was aching. All she wanted was to sleep. She wiped her hands with a towel and stepped out of the kitchen, only to freeze in her tracks. Vanessa stood in front of her, arms folded across her chest, a cold smile on her lips. Going somewhere? To sleep? Emily's heart dropped. She didn't even know where her room was. She just stared helplessly. Vanessa walked closer, a venomous look in her eyes. "Go find a maid's room to sleep in," she sneered. "Because I'm going to be in Liam's room tonight." Her voice dripped poison. "You do know I'm his first wife, right? And now you've seen your place here. Don't forget it." Emily's eyes welled up, but she didn't speak. What could she say? With her head bowed, she followed the maid, who silently led her to a cramped room, where she lay on the floor, curling up with tears rolling down her cheeks. What kind of life had she stepped into? She cried silently, until exhaustion pulled her into sleep. The next day passed in much the same way. Quiet, invisible, obedient. Emily stayed busy, quietly doing chores. A few times, Liam passed by and saw her working alongside the staff. He said nothing, just tightened his lips and kept walking. It was the third day in the mansion when something changed. Emily was scrubbing the kitchen floor when Mrs. Sawyer walked in. Her heels clicked sharply on the tiles. Her voice cracked through the kitchen like a whip. "Still stuck in your favorite chores? Did you forget why I brought you here?" Emily turned quickly, startled. Mrs. Sawyer's eyes burned with sharp judgment. "Vanessa's gone back to her city apartment. She won't be back for 10, maybe 15 days. She stepped closer. "These days, you'll spend locked in Liam's room. That's what I brought you here for, not to scrub floors." Emily's throat tightened. Tears burned behind her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but Mrs. Sawyer's glare silenced her. Without another word, Emily walked down the hallway, reaching the door of Liam's room. Her hand trembled on the handle. He was in there, her husband. She felt like nothing, like someone who didn't belong in his world. Slowly, She opened the door and stepped inside. The room was dark, the air still. She didn't dare go near the bed. She curled up quietly on the cold floor, eyes shut tight. The hardwood pressed against her back. But she didn't care. She was okay. But when rain fell heavily, she met with her husband's real personality for the first time. But morning was different. She got back from the flashback of her past life. Emily's eyes shot open at the sound of a blaring alarm. She blinked, disoriented, then realized she was no longer on the floor. She was in the bed, Liam's bed. A wave of panic rushed through her. She sat up with a jolt. Across the room, Liam stood in front of the mirror, calm, composed, brushing his hair like nothing had happened. If anything, he looked even more handsome today. Emily quickly averted her gaze. "Good morning," Liam said flatly. "I already had breakfast. I've got somewhere to be. You can eat downstairs." Then, after one last glance at her pale face, he turned and left the room. Emily exhaled slowly and got up. Vanessa wasn't home today, which meant Mrs. Sawyer was everywhere, visible in every corner of the house. It didn't take Emily Grace long to understand the nature of Vanessa and Mrs. Sawyer's relationship, and unfortunately, she was caught right in the middle of their silent war. Half the day had already passed when Liam Carter returned from an important errand. As he stepped into the living room, he paused, his brows knitting tightly. His mother sat comfortably on the couch, while down on the floor, Emily was kneeling, massaging Mrs. Sawyer's legs. A deep frown settled across Liam's face. But without saying a word, he turned and walked upstairs to retrieve a file from his room. When he returned, a sharp craving for coffee made him call out to a maid passing by, "Bring me some coffee." As he sat down with his phone, skimming through urgent emails, he noticed Mrs. Sawyer speaking curtly. "Emily," she said firmly, "go dust my bedroom. There are expensive items in there. I can't trust just any maid." Liam looked at his mother, holding back his frustration. Emily silently nodded and headed toward the bedroom. A few minutes passed. The maid returned and placed the coffee in front of Liam. He was sipping it calmly, when suddenly, the sharp crash of glass came from upstairs. Crash! His head shot up. What did that clueless girl just do now? Mrs. Sawyer snapped, rising from her seat. Girls from poor families have no sense when it comes to handling delicate things. Liam's expression turned cold. The maid soon appeared, dragging Emily by the arm. Her tear-filled eyes trembled in fear. "She broke your imported vase, ma'am," the maid said. "The one you brought from Europe." Mrs. Sawyer's temper exploded. "I told you to be careful." "Foolish girl. Who's going to pay for that? Your dead father? Or your sick mother lying in a hospital bed?" Her voice thundered through the house. That was it. Liam couldn't take another word. He stood up abruptly, throwing the file onto the table. "That's enough, Mom." Mrs. Sawyer turned to face him in surprise. "What's wrong with you?" She was taken aback by the sudden fury in his tone. She knew Liam well. He didn't explode easily. "Why did you bring this girl here?" Liam asked, his voice icy. "You told me you chose her because she's respectful and decent. Because Vanessa isn't fit to be this family's daughter-in-law. But Emily is. You said she'd give us a future, a child. But what I see is someone treated like a maid. The way you're handling her, it's beneath everything we stand for." Emily raised her head, stunned. "He was defending her? This is between me and her." Mrs. Sawyer replied coldly. "Whatever I do, it's none of your concern." Liam stepped closer, locking eyes with her. "It is my concern. She's my wife. She lives under my name in this house, and I won't allow anyone to treat her inhumanely. She obeys every word you say. She even sat there rubbing your legs," he continued. "Vanessa never so much as brought you a glass of water." Mrs. Sawyer scoffed. "Exactly why I brought her here. To make Vanessa suffer. Girls like her, obedient, voiceless, poor. They make perfect daughters-in-law, easy to control." In that moment, Liam understood everything. His jaw tightened, disappointment washing over his face. "So that's why you forced this marriage?" he said bitterly. "You wanted to kill two birds with one stone. Make Vanessa jealous, and crush this girl under your power. Well, that ends today." Mrs. Sawyer froze. "What do you mean?" Liam stepped closer, voice steady and final. "She's my wife, and no one gets to treat my wife like a slave. You have a dozen maids, Mom. If you need more, I'll hire more. But she's not your servant. And as for Vanessa," he said, "yes, she's a career-focused woman. Her father married her to me because I was a name. a power figure. You chose her because of her wealth. But we were never right for each other. And last night, we both decided, it's over. She wants a divorce. I already sent the papers this morning. He turned toward Emily. This girl's is my wife now, the only daughter-in-law of this house, and she deserves the same respect as anyone else in my life. Emily's eyes welled with tears. She stared at him, at the man whose brown eyes now burned, with a mix of anger and fierce protectiveness. Come with me, he said gently, extending his hand. Emily hesitated. Mrs. Sawyer shot her a venomous glare, but didn't move. She knew Liam. Knew when he said something, he meant it. If anyone dared to go against him now, he wouldn't hesitate to burn bridges. She sighed deeply and sank into the couch, defeated. Emily placed her trembling hand in Liam's. He led her toward the bedroom. As soon as the door shut, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She collapsed against him, burying her face into his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. Don't cry, he whispered softly, holding her close. It's over. Everything's fine now. I know what she did, he added. She blackmailed you, didn't she? Used your mother's medical treatment as leverage? Emily nodded, crying harder. Well, Liam said with a warm tone, I've already taken care of it. Your mother's now in one of the best private hospitals. She's going to be okay. She clung tighter to him, hiding her tear-streaked face in his chest. Liam's arms wrapped gently around her. He smiled and kissed her forehead. What's your name? He asked, brushing her hair back. Was it Emily or Emma? I couldn't quite read it on the license. She looked up with a teary smile. My name is Emily. Emily Grace Carter. He smiled back. Beautiful name. Just like you. His gaze softened as he looked into her eyes, green as emerald, framed by golden strands of hair. And for the first time, Emily felt safe in the storm.